You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramah Pishim Israel 5779, 2019. This week's Parsha is Parshas Terumah, and in our Parsha we have the donations that the Jewish people gave to the Mishkan to build a tabernacle, which would be a dwelling place for God's presence amongst the Jewish people. And now, as we're going to see, Reb Chaim Friedland is going to share with us an amazing thing, that there were two different types of donations that the Jewish people gave, one of which was the shekel, the chatzi shekel, the half of a shekel, which is an obligation for every single person to give. And the other type was the nedivus, the abundant offerings that people gave voluntarily in order to be part of the construction of the Mishkan. And let's see, what is the idea behind these two different types of nedivus, these two different types of giving for the Mishkan. The verse tells us, this is in Exodus chapter 25, verse 2, that each person is supposed to, whoever his heart awakens within him the desire to give to the Beis HaMikdash, to the temple, so he's going to give a donation. Rashi says, there are three different donations that were spoken of here. There was one truma, one offering, one donation, which was a certain amount per person. And those were used for the foundations of the temple, of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Another one was a certain amount, again, an obligation which was to be given in order to be able to pay for the different sacrifices which were on behalf of the entire tzibur, the entire public. Mishkan, and the other type, was in order to create all of the kalim, all of the different utensils that were used in the Mishkan. It was according to how much a person wanted to give. It wasn't a certain set amount. When it came to the obligation of Terumah, when it came to the obligation of the donations, there was a certain amount that was meant to be given. Like we said before, a half a shekel for each person. It was used for the foundation, the special pieces that were used for to hold together the boards of the Mishkan. But when it came to the gold and the silver and the other things that were given, so it was based on how much a person wanted to give. We need to understand the idea, why is there some that's an obligation, why are there some trumas, some donations that are a certain amount and it's obligated, no one is free from giving that truma, that donation, and there are other ones that were according to how much a person wanted to give, based on a person's desire. So he gives us a foundational concept that has to do with the concept of mitzvah v'yoseh as opposed to ein mitzvah v'yoseh. There are people who are obligated in certain commandments, and as a result of that, there's a certain level of reward. There's a certain spiritual attainment that a person has because he did it or she did it, and they were obligated. As opposed to someone who does a mitzvah or fulfills a commandment or fulfills the will of God without being commanded to do it. Which is greater? We find that there are two types of mitzvahs, says Reb Chaim Friedland. One is that there's an obligation to fulfill them. And there are those that are not an obligation to fulfill them. For example, tzitzis. Person wears tzitzis. That's only an obligation if a person has a four-cornered garment. We do it because we love tzitzis. We want to do them even though we're not obligated per se, but we actually have a four-cornered garment, put on the tzitzis, we wear it. Mezuzah, a person only has to have a mezuzah if they have a house. Nazirus, karbonos, nadava, different types of mitzvahs that are not an obligation to do them, but one can elect to do them. Even in the mitzvahs that a person has an obligation to keep them, we can also find that within the mitzvah itself there are aspects of it being a choice, of it being a certain amount that I do it based on how much I want to. B'shir ha-mitzvah, let's say a person gives tzedakah, they want to give charity. So how much charity does a person give? There's different levels of charity. There's a certain minimal lowest level of fulfilling that commandment. And there's an aspect of the mitzvah, a certain level that if I give more, let's say in tzedakah, more charities, so then that's my choice. That comes out of my nedivus halev. That comes out to how much I want to do the mitzvah. Chazal Amar sages tell us, it's Gemara in Kedushin on Daf Lamed Aleph, page 31, that someone who does it because he's obligated So that's a greater level than someone who does it when they're not obligated. Because of Tosfos explains there, the Hainu Taima, Demisha Mitzvah V'Yoseh Adif. What is the foundational reason? There's a few different understandings of it, but Tosfos says a specific idea which Reb Chaim Friedlander is going to expand upon. And that is when a person is obligated in performing the mitzvah, it's a greater thing. Why? That person will put more effort into it. He's more worried about it. He's more concerned. Why? Pen Yavor. Because he's afraid that it's going to pass, he's going to miss the opportunity, or he's afraid that he's not going to do it correctly. Someone who is not obligated in that commandment, it's a nice thing that they do it, but they don't have that same worry. They don't have the same attention. They don't have the same focus on doing it properly. That person has what's called their bread in their basket, which means that they could just not do it. So therefore, they're not as worried and they're not as concerned. And so the results are different for somebody who performs it because they're obligated to do it. When a person is worried about doing a commandment properly, so that comes from their yiras shamayim, their fear of heaven, their awe of God, their respect for God, their respect for the obligation. A person who doesn't have that worry to fulfill the mitzvah, it's true that such a person fulfills it, and he has reward. He has attained a spiritual attainment. But since that person is not as worried, he's not as focused on the fulfillment of that commandment, he doesn't have the same level of fear of heaven. He's not doing it at the same level of awe and respect for God as a person who's commanded to do it. Now, Hagri Blazer, Kaisif, so the Rabbi Blazer says like this: that a person who's worried and he has pain, he's worried, he's very mitzta'er, as we say in Hebrew. That worry, that focus, as we keep saying, is what brings up the level of the mitzvah and gives a person a greater reward, a greater spiritual attainment. Just like other pain that a person has when a person does God's will. That's what they said, like we just said. And this is included in what our sages say, which we mentioned last week. We're going to expand upon it today. That according to the difficulty, so is the reward. When a mitzvah is difficult to fulfill, the harder it is, the more the more challenging something is, the greater the feeling is when one accomplishes it. And that's true also in mitzvahs. When a person is challenged, it's difficult to fulfill that commandment, the results are that a person has a greater spiritual attainment. And so when a person is obligated to do it, so there's a certain greater tsar, as we said, there's a certain greater pain involved, a worry. Even within those who are obligated to do it, not everyone has the same feeling toward the mitzvah. Not everyone has the same worry about fulfilling it properly. This will depend on a person's fear of heaven. According to how much a person respects God, respects the Torah, respects the obligation, that's going to change the level of how they do that mitzvah. According to how much a person is concerned and worried about fulfilling God's will, so it's going to raise up the level of his fulfillment of that commandment. According to the difficulty, so is the reward. According to the pain a person experiences, so is the reward. If a person will be missing in his fear of heaven, so what can happen is very interesting. If a person doesn't really care so much about fulfilling the commandment, he's not so worried about doing it right. He does it, but he's not so concerned. So then it can fall down to the level of someone who's someone who is not obligated in doing it. What is the advantage of someone who is mitzvah v'yoseh, like we said, the fact that he's concerned and he's worried, he's not going to do it right. A person who doesn't have that fear of heaven inside of him, so what's going to happen? He's not worried about not doing it wrong. The result can be that a person is just going to, the spiritual attainment is not as great because he's not as worried, he's not as focused, he's not giving up so much. What does it help the person that he's obligated if he's not worried about fulfilling God's will? So we see that a person can lose the advantage of doing it as someone who's obligated. If a person is missing in his fear of heaven. Very interesting, he says that we find in our sages, they say in Kedushin, that if a person has transgressed a certain prohibition, okay, if you did it one time, okay, you did something wrong. Did it a second time, the person is now, for that person, it's already permitted. What does that mean? The person has lost his conscience. The conscience inside of a person reminds a person, this is something that feels wrong. I shouldn't do this. When a person has done it and then done it again, the conscience stops talking to him. His conscience is already blemished. Even if a person, let's say a person has lost his conscience, and one time it works out, he doesn't do this sin. That person now loses, heaven forbid, loses the schar. A person, if you don't, there's a certain, again, a spiritual accomplishment when a person refrains from doing an avera, from performing a prohibition. Why? Because the person, when their conscience goes down, they've lost that fear of heaven. Maybe and it's brought there as well. I believe it's Rav Blazer as well, from the words of the Gemara. Issa re'ei viter ra. Okay, excuse me. Ra viter goyim. It says that God saw, and He was mevater on the nations of the world. He gave up. What does that mean? He saw that the nations of the world were not fulfilling the 7 Noachide laws. Okay, and he said, forget it. They're not obligated in the 7 Noachide laws anymore. Gemara explains, it doesn't mean that they no longer are obligated in the 7 Noachide laws. Rather, it means that they no longer receive reward for fulfilling them like someone who is commanded and does it. Only like somebody who is not commanded and does it. Why do they lose their reward? Why is it no longer a great attainment for one of the members of the Umas Ha'olam? Since God saw that they were not fulfilling the commandments. He saw that they didn't have any fear of heaven. They didn't have any worry about the fulfillment of the commandments. They no longer can receive reward as a result. Now, there are many different levels within mitzvah v'yaisa. Okay? What comes out, an amazing thing, the more a person has fear of heaven, the more a person has respect for God, the more a person recognizes within himself that I'm doing it because this is God's will. He's mitzvah, he's worried. That's what's causing him to do the mitzvah. And he's worried about not fulfilling it. So that strengthens within him the level of the mitzvah, the level of his fulfillment, the level of his spiritual attainment. Nimson Cain comes out, the reward that a person attains is dependent on the level of his Yir Shamayim, the level of his fear of heaven. Fulfilling it, as we said, based on how much tsar a person has. Rav Desser writes in the name of his father, that there's a concept that it's better to do it one time with pain, with difficulty, with a challenge, more than 100 times without difficulty. The They're not coming to tell us how much pain a person has. Even a little bit of difficulty is 100 times greater than a person who did it without any difficulty, fulfill the commandment without difficulty. The more difficulty it is involved in the fulfillment, it's even greater than 100 times. Each time it goes 100 times, 100 times, 100 times. It can be that a person fulfills his obligation, his mitzvah, his commandment that God commanded, and it's done with challenge, with difficulty, with pain. It could be tens of thousands of times the value of someone who fulfills it without pain. In Cain, we can understand how much a person adds to their fulfillment of the mitzvahs when a person has tsar, he has pain over it. How? Through his yirah shamayim, through his fear of heaven. Because he's afraid he might not do it correctly. According to the level that a person strengthens the concept of musar, working on the ethical concepts, working on fear of heaven, so he strengthens and makes greater the reward in the aspect of somebody who is fulfilling it because he was commanded to. Okay, now that's all it has to do. We've been speaking now until now about mitzvah v'yosa, somebody who's commanded to do it. But there's something amazing. There's another aspect we said within the mitzvah, right? There's a person can be obligated to do it, but there's also higher levels in the mitzvah. A person can give more charity. A person can have a more beautiful esrog. He can spend more money on his mizuzahs. Each mitzvah has within it different levels, and that aspect of it is ein mitzvah v'yosa. So how are we to understand that part? Because we seem to be saying that that's not the greatest mile, it's not the greatest advantage. No, he says there's a greater advantage within that as well. Until now we've been talking about the fear that a person has, the worry a person has, because they're not going to fulfill it properly. But now there's another aspect, which is when I want to do it better, when I want to do it on a higher level, that indicates not my fear. I'm not afraid I'm not going to fulfill it properly, but rather it indicates that I have a love for Hashem. It shows that I want to do what God wants from me. I show my love for Hashem. The dugma. For example, he says the mitzvah of the four minim, of the hadasim, haravis, etc. That's so there's the lowest level that a person can fulfill it. So there's also the beautification of the mitzvah, having a nicer esrog, having one without any spots. Shows how much the person loves the mitzvah. So that's this aspect that we're saying. Of Ein mitzvah, he's not obligated in that. So this comes back to the idea of nedivus halev, performing the commandments because we want to do it, because it just pours out of our hearts because we love God. Amazing thing. He says two sides of it. That when a person loves somebody else, when a person loves their spouse or their child, etc., so the result of that love is that they want to give to the other person. They want to go over and beyond for the other person. They do favors for the other person, even if the person doesn't even ask anything. And he quotes from the Sil Sisham, I'm not going to read it inside, but that a child or a spouse who has so much love for the other one, so when they hear even a hint to something, they hear, oh, my mouth is very dry. It's an opportunity for me to get my spouse a cup of water, get my father a cup of water. His mouth is dry. He didn't even ask for a cup of water. But that's the what results from love, is that a person, it pours out from him the desire to do something above and beyond. And that's this aspect of nedivus halev in the ein mitzvah v'yosa aspect. Okay? So it comes out according to the level of love that a person has for Hashem. So the result is that a person has this aspect of nedivus, of giving it out for free, of giving out, be above and beyond. In this aspect, like we said. But he gives us another very important point, that it can also work in the other direction. While it's true that if a person has love, so the result can be an outpouring of doing things for the other person or for Hashem. But it's also true in the other direction. When a person does something for another person extra, they do extra things. They write a little love note to their spouse. The mother puts a candy or a treat inside of the lunch of the child that the child wasn't expecting. That brings a person to a greater love as well. It works in both directions. Marin of Rabbeinu Zal Hizbir, Rav Dessler explains, it's a very well-known concept. The word avo, which means love, the root of that word, says Rav Dessler, is hav, which means to give. Love comes as a result of giving. When a person gives to somebody else, the more a person invests in somebody else, the more the person loves that person. We find that he explains this based on the words of the Gemara. The Gemara says, a person would prefer one small measure of his own more than 9 times that amount that's someone else's. Meaning, when a person works at something, when a person creates something, it's his. He loves it more than anything else. Even if somebody invested more or someone else worked very hard and created much more. I want my thing. I want the thing that I created. I'm connected to it because I invested into it. A person who worked very hard in his field, in his orchard, bringing the fruits to fruition, he's connected to it. It's much more dear to him. Certainly this is true when it comes to our relationships with others. To the extent that a person invests in somebody, so he identifies with that person, and that results in love towards him. So too in our service of God, when it comes to the way that I relate to Hashem. To the extent that I do it out of freely giving to God, as it were, the more I give to God, the more I'm giving up for God, the more I strengthen my love for Hashem. While it's true that we have an obligation when it comes to those mitzvahs we are commanded to do, and we need to know that even after the obligation, there's another aspect. There's much room within the mitzvah to perform it in a way which is that extra step, that above and beyond, from my own desire, from my own will, to fulfill those commandments. And that brings a person to a love of God. It brings a person to a higher level of love of God. And he brings down here, I'm not going to read this inside, but the Maral says that the difference between people and malachim, angels, they serve God only out of fear. The only love that we find that's mentioned is the way that they treat each other. They're not jealous of each other. They're all serving God. But as far as their relationship with God, the angels serve God out of fear. Man, however, human beings, because we have bechir, we have free will, so that leaves it possible for us. An angel doesn't have a choice. They must serve God. That's fear. But we have a choice. We don't necessarily feel that we must serve God. So that opens the possibility for us to serve God out of love. So it's an amazing opportunity. Okay? So now let's bring it back to the Mishkan, back to our Parsha. Like we said at the beginning, the Mishkan had 2 different types of donations. Terumah mechzis hashekel, shemizeh osvos ha'adonim yisodos ha'Mishkan. There was the half shekel, which everyone was obligated to bring, and that was for the foundation of the Mishkan. The second aspect was the donations that were given based on a person's desire. The tabernacle, which represents the place where God's divine presence dwells. This is the place that connects between God and us. The main aspect of its building was done through this aspect of doing it from a person's heart, based on how much a person wanted to. Because we need the aspect of the inside being covered with gold. It's golden, it's beautiful, it's special because it was done from the Divas Halev out of choice, out of love. That's the place where God reveals His love for the Jewish people. But we need to understand that when it came to the foundation of the tabernacle, that was something which was given as an obligation. It wasn't just coming because a person felt like it, it was coming because a person had to. This teaches us, even though we understand how important and how beautiful and how amazing it is to do something out of love for God, the foundation for all service of God is fear of God. That's the beginning. The beginning of service of God has to be bottom line, like we spoke about last week. I do it because God says so. Right? I can't ever do it if I'm only doing it out of love, so that if I don't feel the love today, I'm not going to do it. Right? No, there's a foundation. It's non-negotiable. We do it because we fear God. We do it because we respect God's word. That's the aspect of you're obligated, and we do it. Only once a person has that Yiras Shamayim, then we add on to that. From there we go to receive, or to try to attain the level of Avas Hashem, of loving God and doing it out of our love for Hashem. So I want to bless you and ask you to bless me back. Hashem should help us, that we should be zeicha, we should merit to be able to serve Hashem with both of these aspects, with Yiras Hashem, starting off with that respect for God, with that fear of heaven. And to the extent that we have that fear of heaven, it gives a tremendous power to our mitzvahs. Hashem should help us have that power. And Hashem should also help us to have the understanding, to have the wisdom, to be able to add on that level of ahava, the place where we do it out of our free will, to add on and create a tremendously deep level of love between ourselves and God. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.